Hello viewers, welcome to Code with Lukman. Today we will learn how we can consume external API in Laravel 9 or Laravel 10. Though you can also apply this tutorial in previous versions of Laravel as well. Okay, so we will consume this uh, API in our Laravel application. Okay, this is basically a quiz API and it's a simple HTTP REST API for technical quizzes. Okay, it returns you the questions and their optional answers and the correct answers. Okay, and behind the scenes, uh, we will be using Guzzle to send HTTP requests to the above mentioned API. Okay, and in Laravel 10 we don't need to install the Guzzle manually because it's already installed once you create a new Laravel application. Okay, so if you go to composer.json, you can see that Guzzle is already installed. Okay, and right now its version is 7.2. Okay, and so just create a new Laravel application, and I have already created the one. Yeah, right now it's Laravel version 10.1.1. Okay, okay, let's start with creating a model and migration. So create a new model, question, and a migration called questions. Yeah, now go to questions table. To save the time, let's just copy this. Okay, so basically I have added four columns in questions migration file. Okay, so the first column is question, the second column is answer underscore a and answer underscore b, answer underscore key. Okay, and so there are four columns and the data type is string, and let's also create a controller. Okay, so make, let's call it question controller. Okay, now we also need to define the functions in the question controller. Before defining the functions in question controller, let's run the migrations. So our migrations have executed successfully. Now the tables have been created in the database. Okay, so let's go to the question controller. Here we will define two functions. Okay, The purpose of first function named as fetch insert, basically it will fetch the questions from the database uh, and their answers, and then it will insert the questions and their answers into the database. Okay, and the second function will be show function. Okay, this function will just retrieve all the questions from the database and return it to the view. Okay, so let's do that first. All, so retrieve all the questions from the database and then return view. Okay, there is already a welcome.blade.php, so, and return. Okay, let's say it questions. Now we can return here dollar data, and then we can retrieve it in the view as dollar questions. Okay, and here we need to call the API. Okay, so let's go to the quiz API documentation. Okay, here is the you need to visit. Okay, so here is the quiz API link. You can read all the documentation about it, and it's a simple HTTP REST API for technical quizzes. Okay, and we will be using Guzzle to make HTTP requests. Okay, as you know that Guzzle is a PHP HTTP client that makes it easy to send HTTP requests and trivial to integrate with web services. Guzzle is already installed in Laravel 10, so we don't need to install it manually. Okay, so if we go to quizapi.io, just sign it, log in, and go to the API, and here click on the token. I have already created the token, but if you don't had created the one, you will see a get API token button here. Okay, and then you will see the your token here. Okay, we will use this token to make the HTTP request to the quiz API. Okay, so let's read the documentation of the quiz API so that we can consume it. So if you click on the API documentation, okay, here you can read everything in detail. uh, Here are the examples. Okay, so basically at least this is the simplest form we can consume this API. Okay, so at least we need to pass three parameters: URL and API key. Okay, we have already got our API key. Okay, as I had showed you. Okay, and the data returned will be like this. You can see this response. Okay, so let's. Okay, so I had not copied the token. Let's copy our API token. Okay, uh, token. Let's copy the API token. I will paste it here. And now let's make the request to the API. Okay, let's declare a variable. Okay, and copy the URL, and then we need to pass API key and limit. API key our API key is the token which we had. Just copy the token here, and the second parameter we need to pass is limit. So basically it will limit the number of questions to 10. 10, right? And to test it, just return dollar response so we can see what has been returned. Yeah, okay, that's and now we also need to set the routes. So if we go to welcome.blade.php, okay, no, sorry, web.php, okay, let's declare a now new route here. Let's call it fetch, and then question controller class, and the function name is let's copy the function name from here, fetch insert. Okay, okay, let's go to the fetch, add fetch on the last, no, just fetch. Invalid route action. Let's see what's wrong here. So the guys problem here is we forget to add the scare bracket around here. Okay, and let's close this scare bracket, and I think the problem should be fixed. Yeah, okay, uh yeah, but yeah, our route is uh fetch, just fetch. Okay, okay, we also need to add in the custom controller. Okay, we need to add the facade. Okay, http facade. Okay, through which we are making request to the API. Okay, and let's refresh it. So it has redirected us to the quiz API page. Something is wrong. Let's see. Okay guys, the problem here is here we are making call to the API, but we don't need this here. Okay, and now the URL link is correct. Let's refresh this page. Yeah, now the response has been returned, okay, from the API. Okay, you can see there is a question. Okay, and yeah, let's go to the question controller. Okay, and exclude the extra information, uh, JSON decode, so properly convert it into the JSON format, and dollar response into body. So basically this request dollar response body uh, will only fetch the content of the data returned by the API. Okay, so it will exclude the header information and things like that. Okay, let's refresh it. Yeah, now you can see a proper JSON response. Okay, and there is no header information. Next, what we can do is we can create a for each loop. For first of all, create a new post object. So basically all the response returned by the API, we will save all the questions and their possible options into our database. Okay, let's change it to dollar questions instead of dollar response. Okay, to make it more meaningful. Okay, and now let's use for each. Okay, so now using the for each, we will read and iterate through the records returned by the API. Okay, so all the response returned by the API will be saved into the dollar questions. Okay, as dollar q dollar q question. Let's do it like this. Let me see the columns. Okay, answer A option is answers answer underscore A. Okay, PHP storm saves a lot of time. B C and, it is pertinent to mention here that I am not saving all the response returned by the API. Okay, so the purpose is just to teach you how we can retrieve the data from the external API, and then we can play with it. We can insert it to the database and we can display it to the view whatever we want. Okay. I know that API is returning a lot of data, but we are just saving the four values. We had created just four columns in the question, and that's why I'm just saving the four columns. Save. Okay. And once the data is saved into the database, data fetched from external API and saved into database. Okay. So let me explain the summary. Okay, this is a fetch insert function. The purpose of this function is to fetch the data from the external API and then insert into our local database. Okay, and here we are using making a call to the external API. Okay, here is the API URL link, and these are the two mandatory parameters. uh, okay, so this is our personal API token, which can get from the quiz API by registering and then log into your quiz API. Okay, this API is free to use for developers. Okay, and then here we have declared another variable, and here we are converting the response returned by the external API as we need it. Okay, and then using the for each loop, we are uh, going through all the data returned by the API, and then we are saving each record into the database. It is pertinent to mention here API key means our personal token, okay, which gives access to the API, and limit here means the number of questions returned by the. Okay, so in our case, it will fetch only 10 records from the external API. Okay, and then we will read these 10 records using the for each and insert into the database. Okay, let's refresh it. Yeah, you can see data fetched from external API and saved into database. Okay, okay, so let's declare the new route. Right now, if we want to see the data, we can go to the database and see the data has been placed, but let's declare another route. Okay, remove this. Here we had already declared a show function which will retrieve all the questions from the database, and then here we need to call the show function. Okay, let's go to the welcome.blade.php and edit it. Okay, remove the default content of the welcome.blade.php. Okay, let's copy the bootstrap starter template. Okay, so now we see the hello world, right? And let's copy the tables. Let's copy the bootstrap template for the tables and place it here. Remove all the extra rows. So here question A1, A2, A3. So possible answer 1, possible answer 2, possible answer 3. Okay, it is pertinent to mention here that the API also returns the correct answers. but right now we are not doing that. Okay, we will just show the data which we are saving into the database. Okay, so yes, okay, let's read the data. So we are returning dollar data. Okay, we can access it dollar questions in the welcome.php as dollar question. Okay, and then here dollar question. Let's create more ADI. Okay, and here it will be uh, okay, answer A, answer B, sir underscore C. Okay, and let's and for each here, and let's refresh the page. Yeah, we can see, but only one record has been returned. Let's see what's wrong here. Okay, guys. So we are seeing only the one record. So it means let's check if there are multiple records. Okay, so if we see the database, I'm using MySQL Workbench. Okay, there is only one record. So something is wrong over with our function we declared in the controller. Okay, let's go to the question controller. Oh yeah. So here we are through the limit parameter, we are saying to the external API return us the 10 records. Okay. So it means 10 questions with their possible um optional answers and the correct answer. And yeah, the mistake is uh, we need to move it out. Okay. So we need to place a bracket here. The problem is when the first time the for each goes through, is it when it goes to the return, the for each doesn't go to the second route. Okay, so let's close the for each bracket here, and now we are good to go. Okay, so let's first make a another request. Fetch is our route. Okay, to fetch the data from the external API and insert the record into the database. Let's do that. Yeah, data fetched from the external API and saved into the database. Okay, success response is returned. And now if we go to our default route, yeah, now we can see all the record from the external API which has been saved into the database. We can also, if we refresh our database, okay, yeah, now we can see all the records also. That's it for today. So this is how we